Hey, I'm Miranda, and this is the very first episode of Rants on the Rocks. This intro was recorded later because I was nervous as hell and had no idea what I was doing the first time, so there was no intro at all. In this episode, I'm retelling a book essentially to my husband Nick, and then we talk about it. I do have to include a major spoiler alert, obviously, because I go through the book from the beginning to the end. So if you want to read this, pause now, go read it, and then come back. This isn't going anywhere. Also, at some points, I think I referred to the original name we were toying with, Books and Drinks, but obviously we didn't stick with that. This is a learning process, and I guess you just get to come along for the ride. So enjoy.
Motherfucking story time.
Are you excited?
Let's do it. What you got?
Okay, so the book is called Home is Where the Bodies Are.
Okay.
It's by Jeneva Rose.
All right.
So this is obviously the cover that most people see. Okay, but it was pissing me off, so I took it off.
Okay.
And
I like that better anyways.
Yeah, it's got like a cute little matte finish to it.
Okay.
It feels nice in the hands.
I like it.
Oh,
Okay.
sorry. Okay, so I guess we'll just jump right into it.
Yeah, what you
I
got?
don't know. So, Home is Where the Bodies Are was published in 2024 by Blackstone Publishing, and it was written by #1 New York Times bestselling author Jeneva Rose. She also wrote The Perfect Marriage and You Shouldn't Have Come Here, two highly recommended books on Book Talk.
Okay. Exciting.
Yeah. So I haven't read You Shouldn't Have Come Here. It's on my list. I did read The Perfect Marriage.
Okay. And this is a series or it's not a series?
No, it's
Okay.
not a series. They're just all by the same author.
Okay.
But The Perfect Marriage, the new one of that one was actually like just released. I just bought it.
Okay.
So also
works.
on my list. All right, back to it. Home is Where the Bodies Are follows 3 siblings, Beth, Nicole, and Michael. That's their birth order.
Okay.
And it takes place in a decently small town in Wisconsin. I think I was going to go back and find the town if it said it, but I forgot. Anyway, and each chapter is like told from each one of their points of view. So it like kind of skips around a little bit, but it's all told very, sequentially.
Okay.
At this point in the story, they're all 30 years old. Or like in their 30s, and they're all estranged, and they have been since their dad, Brian, took off 7 years prior. So the book starts from Beth's point of view, and she is caring for their mom, Laura, who's on hospice. The hospice nurse has already told her that it's getting close to the end, like today.
Yikes.
So she called and texted Nicole and Michael, and she's just staying nearby. So her mom isn't alone. I mean, she's been living there with her and everything, but right there.
Okay.
So while she's saying her last goodbyes, and like the final moments that they have alone before her brother and sister get there, her mom suddenly says, "Your father didn't disappear." So, yeah.
Scandalous.
I know. So Beth is like, "The fuck? What are you talking about? What do you mean it didn't disappear? Where is he? What's going on?" But like, Laura's dying and shit. So she's like, "Don't trust." And then her hand goes limp in Beth's hand, and her eyes still, and her mouth hangs open, and she dies without finishing her sentence.
Cliff.
Yeah, so just right into it.
Okay.
Yep.
All
Here we
right.
go. Yeah, diving in. All right. So now switching to Michael's point of view, he's on his way to their childhood home, obviously hoping that he makes it in time to say goodbye, but also he kind of has like an uppity attitude towards his sisters. One quote is that he's saying, "I didn't want to come back, but I can't trust my sisters to handle the estate properly. They have a plethora of their own unresolved problems. Nikki, an addiction to drugs. Beth, an addiction to mediocrity."
Some bad blood there.
Well, he feels that his sisters resent him because he's the one that got out and got away from the small town, and he went out and he made something of himself. So he's successful while they just kind of like stayed the same or got worse. And this chapter ends kind of abruptly with him just right about to walk into the house.
Okay.
So this, him walking into the house, it's been like 20 minutes since their mom died. And so Beth is just like sitting there and she's like, it could have been 20 minutes, could have been 2. And she says, time stops when death makes a visit. Ooh. So, yeah, I thought that's why I included those.
That's spooky.
Yeah, so I mean, she's like reeling from her mom dying, and then obviously from her mom being like, "Hey, your dad didn't disappear." So real quick,
what's the gap in between that from her saying that and then now?
Like 20 minutes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's where she's saying that,
so
like,
just happened.
Yeah, it just happened. So at this point,
fresh.
she's still sitting there with her mom, and Michael's like just about to walk into the house.
A lot of shit going on.
And yeah, so we're getting like a quick flashback to when their father left. And he essentially disappeared 7 years ago. And all he left behind was a simple letter to their mom saying, "Laura, I'm sorry. Love, Brian." That was it.
Okay.
Just quick little note. And the only sign of him was on surveillance cameras, once 7 miles south of their house, and then one time as you crossed the border into Illinois. And then Laura had told the kids that like they'd been having problems and stuff, so that maybe that could explain it. But obviously the kids were like, what the hell is going on?
Yeah,
like
right.
what's been happening with you guys? And I mean, they're all adults by this point, so it's plausible.
Yeah, they're all in
things,
their 30s, right?
Like things could have been happening since they'd been out of the house.
Right.
I guess. Yeah. So then obviously Laura had to deal with being a suspect for a bit of a time because, it's always the spouse. That's just how it is.
That's fair.
Yeah. Then Brian's truck ended up showing up 2 weeks later, abandoned in McAllen, Texas, just 11 miles from the Mexican border. So the police just kind of determined that he up and took off to Mexico and he just left.
Okay.
And so Laura was let go as a suspect, and that was that. Like they just kind of moved on.
So they think he's guilty?
What do you mean?
They think why did he take off? Okay.
But I mean, he left a note saying, "I'm sorry.
Yeah. Okay.
Love, Brian." And then they were like, "Well, I mean, he's not a minor, so it's not like they can put out an Amber Alert.
Yeah, right.
You can be like, hey, this guy's missing.
This grown adult has
but
left.
I mean, if you want to be missing, you can be missing.
Okay.
So that was that. And now by this point, Michael shows up in Beth's point of view. And so he walks into the house and she tells him that he just missed their mom, and she kind of guilts him a little bit about not being around for the past 7 years. After she's like, when was the last time that you talked to mom? Or, you haven't been around, nobody's seen you or anything. And he's like, oh, well, I sent her a birthday text. Yeah. Okay. So she's like, you're a dick. I don't really feel that bad
7
for you
years,
for missing it.
Right.
Like, you haven't tried that hard up until now. But, still
Did
gives
they know
him,
that she was going to die? Was she sick?
Yeah,
Okay,
she had been sick. I mean, she was on hospice. So, like, generally you get.
And just a text. Jeez.
Yeah. Well, generally you get some kind of warning, I guess.
Right.
But, I mean, still, and she had let them know that, like, it was getting close. So that's why they're there. But even still, yeah.
7 years is a long time.
Probably could have gotten there a little faster. Probably. Anyway, so while he goes to pay his final respects to their mom by himself and everything, Beth goes to call her daughter Marissa. And her daughter Marissa is in the Navy. She's stationed in Korea at the moment. And we also find out that Beth was previously married. She hasn't spoken to her ex-husband, Tom, since Marissa left for the Navy, and that's probably because he left them only a year after Beth's dad disappeared. According to Tom, she was obsessed, and because she was consumed with trying to find her dad or figure out what happened, or anything.
Understandable, yeah.
So he was like,
and he left because of that.
Yeah.
Damn.
So not. Yeah. So, well, not only has she cut off her ex-husband, obviously, But we also find out that she has cut out her sister Nicole, and she did this about a year ago after Beth deemed her too unpredictable and too dangerous to be around.
Family's a clusterfuck.
Kind of.
Okay.
Yeah. So now by this time the hospice nurse has returned, and like she, tells them that she's going to get their mom ready to be picked up by the funeral home and everything like that. Like they have their whole, standard order of operations. So then it's also at this time that Beth gets a phone call from the local police department informing her that Nicole has been attacked and she's at the hospital trying to leave on her own against medical advice. So that's where we get...
That's suspicious.
Yeah, so
why are you trying to leave? You just got attacked.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, this is our introduction to Nicole.
Okay.
So she's in the hospital, obviously, and she has a cast on her arm, but that's actually from like 4 weeks prior from another altercation.
Jesus.
So that kind of gives you an indication of like where she's at right
Okay.
now. But we also learned that she's actually 29 days sober, and that's like the longest since she's been sober since her addiction started. So like,
what's the addiction again?
heroin.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yikes.
So she's surprised to see Beth and Michael even show up at the hospital to pick her up, but she goes with them because fuck else is she gonna do?
You're right.
Yeah.
Nobody else.
Yeah, exactly. And so when they tell her, that their mom has passed away, she's clearly heartbroken. And then we get a little bit more insight as to why.
Okay.
So she's always wanted to be a writer. She used to love writing poems and stories, but then her addiction got in the way of it. And so at this time in the story, she's reflecting on like one of the last good times that she had with her mom, where Laura actually gifted her a $400 vintage typewriter. They had been like out thrifting and stuff like that, and saw the typewriter and was like, oh my God, I love it. Saw the price tag and was like, never mind.
Okay.
So
right.
Obviously Nicole tried to refuse the gift, but her mom was her mom, and told her to have it, and that she knew that she was going to pay her back eventually by getting a book deal. And so Nicole promised that she would. She promised she'd cherish the typewriter and write the book and be a famous author, and she meant it. But then she ended up selling the typewriter for drug money.
Damn. Saw that coming.
And then we also learned that the last words that Laura ever spoke to Nicole were, "Come back when you have a chip." She was just one day away.
Oh, wow.
Only one.
That's wild.
Yeah. So the three of them start talking about what their plans are and their availability for getting things done. Michael says he only has 7 days to be there to have the funeral and help with like clearing out the house and stuff. And then Beth informs them that they need to figure out what they're going to do with the house. And so Michael offers to buy it, but Beth is hesitant. Nicole wants to sell it because then she could use her share of that for whatever she needs, just to live and everything. But obviously Beth and Michael are like
drugs.
Yeah, they're like,
100%.
you're like brand new sober. Yeah. You don't really need to get this kind of money.
Yet,
yeah, yeah. So in the meantime, while they're there, they're just gonna stay in their childhood bedrooms. I mean, everything's like they grew up in the house, it's paid off and everything, so they're just gonna be there. And so on the following day, their mom's attorney, Craig Davidson, randomly shows up at the house and informs the three of them that their mom actually had a will in place, and he's there to let them know what's what. So, once they've all sat down, Craig informs them that their mom left pretty much everything to Beth, rightfully so, because she cared for her this whole time. But maybe most notably, Laura also left Beth a key to a lockbox along with a Post-it note. Laura left her car and journals to Nicole, and then she stated that the belongings she kept of their fathers would initially be split between Beth and Nicole, with the remainder going to Michael. And so finally, Laura's belongings would be split evenly between the three of them. And Craig also informs them that Laura actually had 2 checking accounts. One, Beth is familiar with. It's the regular checking account that she used to pay her bills. But the other account had a balance of $132,000 that Laura opted to have donated to a charity of her choice. Come to find out that the account with the large balance is due to Michael sending her $2,000 a month. which Beth is absolutely furious to find out about because she's barely just been scraping by trying to take care of like both her and her mom this whole time. And her mom's just been like sitting
Stacking.
on this fucking load of money. And then she's like, give it to charity.
Ooh,
That would piss me off.
that's rough. That's rough. Wow. Okay. Not even give it to the kids. Just
That's what I'm saying
charity.
for Beth specifically,
Yeah.
like
could have used that this entire time.
I would have been like,
Veto.
you better hope that you just planned out you had planned out your own funeral because
Yeah.
like you just pissed me all the way off.
That's rough. Charity is my pockets.
Charity is
funny.
me. That's my middle name, actually. Now, so at the end of their meeting, Craig then presents each of them with a letter-sized envelope with their respective names on them and a specific request not to open them until after the funeral. So when Nicole presses Craig asking like, what happens if we open it before? And he's like, probably nothing, but you should always respect the wishes of the dead because
Each one of them got an envelope, right?
they
Okay.
each got their own
Okay.
envelope and just, hold on to it until after the funeral. That was like the only thing that she asked.
Wait till Christmas.
Right? Yeah. So it's like,
Okay.
what you put in the envelope?
Okay. I can't even make a guess. I don't even know.
Good.
That 100K threw me for a loop. So
Right?
I don't
Yeah.
know what to expect now.
I know. After I read that, I was like, what
I don't
else
even
could
know.
you possibly be doing?
What's in the envelopes? What's in the box?
I was just going to say that.
What's in the envelope?
Right?
Interesting. Okay.
All right, so after Attorney Craig leaves, the three of them are left in the house with nothing but memories to sift through. So they jump right into the attic. Well, Beth and Nicole make Michael jump into the attic, and he finds a box. Fair. Yeah. He finds a box labeled memories filled with home videotapes among stored home decor and Christmas decorations. They watch an old home video from Laura's perspective showing the kids' last day of school. Nicole listening to her Walkman and writing in her journal. She eventually reads her poetry to Laura on camera. And then we also see their family night plans to watch the movies they rented from Blockbuster, Saving Private Ryan,
That'll age ya.
and A Night at the Roxbury.
Oh, God. Of course.
So a local girl about Beth's age named Christy Roberts shows up asking to hang out with Beth, but she blows Christy off like by telling her mom just, like she's creeped out by her and just asked her to get rid of her.
When is this? When does this take place?
This is on their last day of school. I don't remember. I mean, I probably have it
it's
marked
fine.
in here, but they were like,
like 20
in
years
high
prior.
school. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so they're in high school by this point. So Laura's like, oh, Beth's in the shower. She can't hang out, blah, blah, blah. Like, so
Yeah,
Christy
right,
just
right.
goes off and goes and plays and everything like that.
Okay.
And that's the end of that video. So they're like, okay, moving on. And they pop in another one. This one's dated June 15th, 1999. It's nighttime. And Laura's recording a small owl. And she's like trying to get it to move on camera. And she's like, ooh, little owl, cute, cute, cute. Doo,
Okay.
doo, doo. But then suddenly Brian pops up, like right in front of the camera.
Whoa.
He's clearly panicking. And there's a weird red smear on his white t-shirt. And he says, Laura, I need your help now. And he directs her to shut off the camera and come to his aid. You can hear the buttons click as like she's trying to shut off the camera and everything. And she sets it down.
Still
But
recording.
you can see that it's still recording.
Okay.
So you see her like walking over to Brian.
It's blood.
And then all of a sudden we see a flash of a body. Quote, head cocked to the right, lips blue and bloated. Skin pale as freshly fallen snow. Damp blonde hair streaked with mud and blood. Wet clothes, a pair of blue jean shorts, and a Britney Spears t-shirt hugging her small body.
Whoa. Okay.
So Laura is obviously startled in the video. Clearly it's the first that she's seen of this body. And Brian's like, it's just an accident. It's just an accident.
What?
You have to help me. The less you know, the better, but you have to help me.
Yikes. That's not good.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's it. And the girl in the video was Emma Harper. She was their next door neighbor who went missing June 15th, 1999, when she was 12 years old.
Oh, God.
She was also the little sister of Beth's high school sweetheart, Lucas.
Jesus. Yeah. Okay.
So the day she went missing, almost everyone in town, as well as the surrounding towns, nearly 500 people, went to the carnival at the park in the town center. The carnival was called Groovin' in the Grove, and the whole thing was organized by their mom, Laura. The kids immediately started questioning if, each other knew about it or anything, like if they think that's why their dad left. And then Nicole's like, come on, guys, do we really think this is real? And just when they start discussing aloud where Emma's body could possibly be, there's a knock at the door. Beth goes to answer it, and coincidentally enough, it's Lucas. He's back at home next door, taking care of his mom now that she's getting older. He brought homemade banana bread and offers his condolences for her mom. And Beth's like...
So we're back in present day then.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so this is after they had just watched the video, and they were just freaking out, trying to figure out if each other knew about it and stuff like that. And Lucas showed up at the door. And so she's like, the fuck? I haven't seen this guy in forever. And the last that she had heard, he was married and living a few hours north from their small town in Wausau. I don't know.
Wausau?
Wausau? Yeah, okay. I don't know. I didn't live in Wisconsin like that.
I think it's Wausau.
Okay. Well, whatever you say. I'll believe you. I don't know. I live by Milwaukee, so that's all I know. Milwaukee. So the intrigue of not seeing him in years, combined with trying to figure out how to handle what she now knows about his sister, compels Beth to invite Lucas on a walk the next morning. Yeah.
Okay. After seeing that video too.
Yeah. So kind of I guess it wouldn't be like a keep your enemies closer kind of thing, but I guess just trying to see if maybe he knows anything. I guess, yeah, just to try and test the waters there, maybe. So in the meantime, sketchy. Nicole decides that she's going to start reading Laura's old journals to see if maybe she can gain some insight.
Okay.
So this is the first journal entry that we see out of many.
Okay.
And it's dated June 15th, 1999. It's the day of the carnival and the day of Emma's disappearance. Yep. So the journal entry reviews the day's events. Beginning at the carnival, Laura's working at the admission booth with Susan, her next door neighbor, and Lucas and Emma's mom. They're reflecting on the hard work that Laura's put into the carnival and excitedly talking about the great turnout while they look out at the crowd. And they're seeing their kids participating in all these various games and other small competitions alongside several of their children. And while Laura's scanning the crowd, she spots a local man named Charles Gallagher. And he's described as a tall, gangly man with a horseshoe mustache, long, thin hair, and a slight hunchback.
Jeez.
And he lives on the corner of their street. So, they're kind of familiar with him,
Okay.
But currently, he's watching a group of teenage girls attempt to create a human pyramid.
Yikes. That's creepy.
Yeah, so she's kind of watching him, and she can't spend too much time focusing on him because she quickly spots Beth making out with Lucas on the dance floor, and Nicole is casually sitting at a table sipping a beer. Okay. Yeah, so she's kind of
a lot of shit going on.
Can't really deal with Charles right now.
Right.
Brian walks up and everything, and she's like, please go deal with that. Mm-hmm. And, she reverts her gaze back to Charles and everything. And she's saying she can't quite put her finger on it, but she just doesn't have a good feeling about something.
Okay.
And so that's the end of that journal entry. So now it's the next morning, and Beth goes on her walk with Lucas. And they're catching up over lost time. Lucas reveals that he's divorced, and Beth shares that she is as well. Lucas explains further, saying that he and his wife split up because she wanted kids, but he didn't. And his reasoning was that, after seeing what his parents went through after losing his sister, he just couldn't bear the thought of taking that chance. And he said, maybe it's the cynic in me, but I figured if I didn't have kids, I couldn't lose them.
Jeez.
Yeah.
It's terrifying.
Yeah. So he's come to terms with the fact that his sister's dead. That's how he sees it, given that she's been gone for 23 years now.
Yeah.
And he's like, come on. If she was able to come home, she would, like, she was 12. It's not like she would just forget. She would have come home, So he's like, come the fuck on.
Okay.
But unfortunately, his mom is suffering from dementia. So she keeps forgetting that Emma's gone.
Oh, God.
Yeah. So
that's awful.
Yeah. So he constantly has to live in a world where his sister's alive,
reliving it,
just out of the house at the moment, whether it's at a friend's house or out riding her bike or whatever. He has to say, to tell his mom just to make her feel better in the moment, because who wants to keep telling her over and over again that your daughter's missing.
That's awful.
Yeah. So that's where he's at right now in life. And they're confessing stuff, and Beth confesses that she's been emailing her dad every week since he disappeared. This was something that they had set up prior to his disappearance. They had shared email addresses and stuff.
Okay.
And it was a little fun thing that they did together, would send each other emails. So she's been doing it since he disappeared. He's never responded. She doesn't think he ever will, but it's just something that she does to help herself feel better.
Okay.
However, now she tells Lucas that she sent her dad one last email telling him that her mom, his wife, has died. And if he doesn't respond to that, then she'll know for sure that he's gone, and she'll be ready to let him go.
Okay.
So it's then that Beth and Lucas cry together over their broken hearts, their broken lives, and the way they feel now that they're back in each other's arms. So after their walk, Beth returns to the house where Nicole is reading their mother's journals at the kitchen table and drinking coffee. And she asks Beth if she could give her a ride to her methadone treatment. So, Beth's obviously trying to help you stay clean. Let's go do that.
Right.
So she drives her over to the clinic. I think it's in the next town over or something. And she opts to just wait in the car since Nicole insists that it's going to be pretty quick. But after she's been sitting out there for 15 minutes, she decides to go inside to see what's going on. And the receptionist is she was taken back 10 minutes ago. She might have slipped out the back or something.
Oh, no.
You can go, she's there's a back door right here. You can go look out there and look around the back of the building or something. But she's okay, it's a fucking methadone treatment clinic.
Right.
So she's I'm not going looking after this girl, basically. You figure that out.
Sure to have it 10 times a day.
Exactly. So that's why she's you can go look back there. So she goes looking for her. And in the back parking lot, Beth sees Nicole talking to a tall man in a rain jacket and jeans, and he's handing her a manila envelope. So Beth calls out to her and runs over before the man has a chance to get away. And it turns out his name is Casey Dunn. He's a boy, now a man, that they went to high school with. And he and Nicole had been friends back then, but now he's a deputy for the county sheriff's office.
Okay. What's in the folder?
What's in the folder?
Yeah.
So Casey casually greets Beth, and they exchange pleasantries before Casey explains that Nicole reached out to him with a request for assistance with her new book, a true crime story about Emma Harper's disappearance. And he's saying how he's more than happy to help as he recalls her disappearance when they were all teenagers. Just happy cop, happy to help.
Yeah, right. So
when they part ways, Beth chastises Nicole for not including her on her plan. And, Nicole's you're fine. It'll be okay. She stands firm on her decision to just kind of play things close to the chest for now. But
this is at the methadone clinic, right?
Yeah, this is behind the methadone clinic that she meets up with Casey.
That's a weird meeting
gets this
place.
Manila envelope.
Right.
Okay. So now we're getting another flashback to June 15th, 1999 via Laura's journal entry.
Okay.
She's reflecting on the moment that Susan showed up at her house in a panic, questioning if they had seen Emma. Immediately, everyone springs into action, and, all the kids informing the adults of the last time they had seen her. And then they're all taking off outside of the house to go look for her, along with Brian, who's opting to drive around and search for her and everything. And they're all trying to assure Susan that, like, somebody's going to find her. Like, it's a small town. Somebody's going to find her. Like, kids don't go missing here. Somebody's going to find her. She's around here somewhere.
Okay.
But Laura has a deep pit in her gut that what they're saying is wrong.
Mm-hmm. Because she knows.
This is before she knew.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So back to present day, when Beth and Nicole arrive back at the house after going to the methadone clinic, they see that Michael is also arriving at the same time. And when they all approach to enter the house, they see that the door is slightly ajar and someone's broken in. The siblings go inside to investigate, and they find the house ransacked, but it doesn't appear that anything's actually missing. And they begin questioning each other again, asking who would have motive, what could anyone else possibly be looking for. Right. And then they end up breaking into yet another argument when Michael finds out about the manila envelope that Nicole received from Casey Dunn.
The cop.
Yep.
Yeah.
So in the midst of their argument, Beth cries out, "Oh my God," while staring at her phone. And she reveals to Nicole and Michael that their father has responded to her most recent email about their mother's passing.
Okay.
Let me flip to page 113 real quick. It said, "Beth, I'm sorry I haven't written you in so long. Trust me, it was for the best that I stayed away. There are things I've done that I'm not proud of, unspeakable things. But know that not a day has gone by that I don't think about you, Nicole, and Michael, and my Laura. I can't believe she's gone, and I'm so sorry I can't be there for you all right now. I wish I could have been a better father, grandfather, and husband, but sometimes we're not the people we want to be. We just are. I know you worry about me, but don't. I'm safe, I'm well, and I'm closer than you think I am.
Whoa.
Give Michael and Nicole my love, and please forget about me because I'm a man not worth remembering.
Jeez.
Love, Dad."
Okay. All right.
Yep. So now that their dad has responded, she feels comfortable confessing to her siblings what her mother said right before she died. Your father didn't disappear.
Yeah.
Of course,
Jeez.
Michael and Nicole are angry. They're really angry with Beth for keeping that from them. And so Nicole's like, "We need to go find Dad immediately." And Michael and Beth are
Closer than you think.
"Yeah." And that's what she said. She's like, "He said he's close. Like, he's got to be nearby.
He's
like
under the house."
Yeah, right? Exactly. So for get just a little bit more backstory on Nicole here. And we learned that she's actually been an addict for the last 7 years since their dad left. And that's actually what started it all.
Jeez.
She had been out driving around looking for their dad when she was T-boned in her car.
Oh.
She was left in critical condition. Then she spent a year in rehab and physical therapy. But it was the pain meds that set the addiction in motion.
Damn. That's rough.
Yeah. So if their dad hadn't
because he left,
she probably wouldn't have even become an addict in the first place. So
Butterfly effect.
Yeah. Yeah. For real.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like if you hadn't have taken off,
Yeah.
not like so much shit wouldn't have
That's
happened.
wild.
So then Michael ends up figuring out a way to track their dad down using his IP address with his high-tech skills.
Okay.
And then Michael located their dad about an hour west of their childhood home where they currently were.
Wow.
And yeah, so Nicole's like, let's
go. Yeah.
And Beth is like,
Huh. Okay.
but Michael's like, I'll take it.
He's only an hour away.
Yeah, that's why she's like, we gotta go.
And why can't you? Okay.
So Michael's like, fine, I'll drive you. And Beth is like, I'm just gonna stay here. Like, I'm just gonna stay at the house.
The place just got robbed. That's not a great idea, but okay.
Yeah. So on the drive to go find their dad, Nicole and Michael confess to each other why they haven't been around to see their mom. Michael tells Nicole that their mom told him not to come back because when their dad left, he told their mom that it was probably for the best. Michael believed that their dad was jealous because Michael got to leave and they had lost contact when he moved to California to live his own life. And then Nicole reveals that she hadn't seen their mom in a year after Laura told her not to come back without a chip, which, like we said, she was unfortunately just a day late.
Yeah.
By the time they get done, talking about that and everything, they pull up to an abandoned looking ranch style house in the middle of nowhere. And the address that pointed them to their father, this is what's there. So they walk up to the house to find nothing. There's nothing there.
Empty lot.
There's no one there.
Oh.
Just an abandoned house. That's it. So they leave. Like, what else are you going to do?
Didn't go inside or anything?
Well, no, they went inside, but like there was nothing. It was an abandoned house. There was nothing there. Like there was no sign of anybody being there. Yeah. So yeah, they're like, this is creepy as shit. Let's go. Flashback again with another journal entry. This one is dated June 16th, 1999. It's the day after Laura and Brian hid Emma's body. Laura's reeling. She's trying to figure out how they got here. What the hell happened for them to be in this position where they've disposed of their neighbors, their friends, missing 12-year-old. She's trying to reason with herself. She's thinking, I had to hide one thing or lose everything. But she still just doesn't understand how all of this happened.
Yeah.
And, then she's standing in the kitchen, like thinking all this to herself and everything. And Beth goes and asks if she can go out with Lucas to go look for Emma. And so she's like, yeah, go. Of course, go look for Emma, because it'd be fucking weird if she said no.
Yeah.
And so after like all the kids leave and everything like that, she suggests to Brian that they confess to Susan and Eddie, Emma's parents, that Emma's dead. And Brian quickly dismisses it, saying, it's too late. We've already gotten rid of her body. That's a felony right there. But like he still won't judge when Laura's like asking why they can't call the police. He's just saying like we just can't. Okay. The less you know, the better. We just can't call them. You got to stop. You got to let it go. We can't tell anybody. Just stop. And it's just begging her to trust him and, insisting that although they did do a bad thing, what they've done is the right thing. So she says, okay. And she lets it go.
Okay.
But she does make like a final mental note that she definitely doesn't trust him anymore.
Yeah.
And now she just needs to continue to make him think that she does.
Okay.
So
this doesn't coincide with the father disappearing, right? Or disappearing?
This is
that the same time
is
frame?
like 7 years before before he disappears.
Okay.
Now back to present day. When Michael and Nicole return to the house after looking for their dad, Nicole just like walks in the house and goes straight to her room. Doesn't really say anything to anybody. And so Beth is like questioning Michael. And so he's telling her about how they pulled up to this abandoned house where Nicole is like desperately hoping their father was going to be.
Yeah.
And then after explaining that, like what happened and all that, he kind of takes the opportunity while they're alone to ask Beth about what she plans to do with the house again. He's really pushing for her to sell the house to him, again, offering to let Nicole live in the house while he covers all the expenses and everything as like an effort to help their sister stay clean. And he's like, just so you don't have to deal with it anymore. Like, let me just take care of this thing for you.
That seems suspicious.
And well, Beth like pushes back and she's like, you're so full of shit. You haven't cared about anybody the last 7 years.
Right.
And like, you've been away this whole time.
Now all of a sudden you want to take care of us.
Yeah. Well, she's like, you always get everything. You always get everything that you want. You've always gotten everything that you want. And like goes on this whole rant about like all the opportunities that their parents placed in front of Michael and everything. And like how he got like all these, you got like a computer and you got to go to camp and got to do all these things. And he's like, our parents supported you too. Like Beth had been, I think she had been like playing softball or track or something like that. And she blew out her knee. So like that fucked up, her college thing. And like, that's kind of where things took a turn for her. And then he's like, mom and dad always supported Nicole with her writing and like all this stuff. And then she became an addict. And like, that's not my fault. And so he's like, just, you're being a bitch, basically. And she's like, you're just an entitled brat. So like, they're just, having like a sibling spat.
Yeah.
And so he's like, I want to buy the house. And she's like, fuck you, out of spite, I'm not going to do it.
Okay.
And so they're arguing and like they're name calling and everything. And it's getting really tense. Then all of a sudden, Nicole sprints into the living room with one of their mom's journals and a stack of papers in her arms. And she says, I don't think Emma Harper was the only body that mom and dad got rid of.
Jesus. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah.
That's fucked.
Mm-hmm. Now we have another journal entry.
Okay. Yikes. This is getting real.
Mm-hmm. So this journal entry, it's been like 4 months. It's dated November 1st, 1999. And Laura reveals that another girl went missing that week on October 26th. The police and the media have deemed her as a runaway, but Laura's suspicious of Brian because he still hasn't told her what really happened with Emma Harper. So while they're finishing up family dinner, there's a knock at the door. It's Susan. And she asks Lauren and Brian if they can step outside so she can speak to them in private. So once they're on the other side of the door, Susan looks at them and says, they arrested him. Charles Gallagher. He confessed to killing Emma. He had confessed to the police that he killed Emma, and then he threw her away in a dumpster behind a furniture store the next town over. And then Susan sobbed over never being able to lay her baby to rest.
Jesus.
And she sobbed and sobbed on Laura's shoulder while Brian stared off into the distance. And collectively, they were just kind of like,
that's not true, though.
What have we done? Yeah. So they're just kind of like, fuck is going on?
Okay.
Like, what do we do?
Why would he?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So now back to present day, right after Nicole comes running out with all the papers and she has them all splayed out and everything. And it's a bunch of newspaper clippings and they're all about the missing girl that Laura previously mentioned in her journal entry.
Okay.
That missing girl was Christy Roberts. Do you remember Christy Roberts?
That sounds familiar.
She was the girl that came to the house looking for Beth.
Oh,
and Beth blew her off.
Yeah, right. Because she was weird, right? Yeah,
so
okay.
this is the girl that went missing.
Ooh.
So while the three siblings are sifting through the clippings, Nicole begins hypothesizing why their mom had them in the first place. So she's like, did their parents have something to do with Christy's disappearance? Did their dad? And maybe their mom was suspicious. Beth tries to clear things up by explaining what little she did know about Christy from their time being young girls together. She knew that Christy's parents were overbearing and they sheltered her so much that she was even homeschooled. And Beth explains that she always thought she was kind of like weird and infantilized. Like she just behaved like she was younger than they were. But what really pushed it over the edge for Beth was when Christy approached her with pictures that she'd taken of Beth while she was out for a run.
That's creepy.
After that, Beth just like tried her best to keep her distance. And so like she didn't think twice about it when Christy was reported as a runaway.
Okay.
Because that's what she was like, they just didn't see any like wrong or what's the fucking word I'm looking for?
Wrongdoing?
Is it wrongdoing or like, it'll come to me.
Okay.
There was no suspicious activity around her disappearance.
Okay.
So they just deemed her as a runaway.
Okay.
And so then Nicole picks up the case file that she had received from Casey Dunn and she continues reading from where she had left off in her room. And she reads from this report about Charles Gallagher. This was the case file that she had gotten about Emma from Casey.
Okay.
So in it was like this part about Charles Gallagher and how he had been held in custody and charged with Emma's murder. There had been an anonymous tip called into the police. They reported that they had seen him talking to Emma earlier at the carnival. So the police then had cause to zero in on him. In the investigation, the police found shoe prints matching Emma's in Charles's yard, along with a ball, a jump rope, and a Powerpuff Girls hoodie that all belonged to Emma.
That seems too okay.
Further in the report, it's revealed that Charles was interrogated for 16 hours straight by the police without an attorney present, which is when he made his confession.
Interesting.
So, yes.
I wonder who was doing the interrogation.
Well, yeah, later on he changed his story, and rightfully so, because while they're reading through this, they find out that he wasn't even arrested until November 1st, 1999, which is what we had just seen when Susan came and told them that. And so there's no way that the shoe prints would have even been considered like in normal circumstances. But this wasn't normal circumstances. Charles was the town weirdo. He kept to himself, and he lived with his mom in an unkempt house and an unkempt lawn. I rhymed there. I didn't even realize.
Okay.
So this wasn't going, based off of the court of law. It was a small town.
Yeah.
It was based off of the court of public opinion.
Exactly.
But in the end, the case against Charles was dropped, and they don't see any explanation as to why just yet. So
lack of evidence, that's for sure.
Right. So now again for another journal entry dated December 2nd, 1999. Eddie, Emma's father, shows up at the end of their driveway while Brian's outside playing in the snow with Beth and Michael. Laura can't make out what they're saying, but Eddie looks tense. His cheeks are flushed, and after he says one last thing to Brian, Brian's eyes widen and his mouth falls open. He looks to the window at Laura in disbelief after Eddie turns to walk away. This is how she knows that Emma's bike was found by the police. And she knows because she made sure they would.
Okay.
So back to present day. The siblings decide to go to the local bar that evening. And while they're there, Casey Dunn shows up and he and Nicole step outside to talk alone. And not one to beat around the bush. Nicole's just like, hey, do you have that file that I asked you for?
Okay.
So he just opens up the passenger door of his cruiser and pulls out 2 folders. And he tells Nicole that one case file belongs to Christy Roberts, the one that she asked for, but the second belongs to Charles Gallagher. He says, I cross-checked Emma Harper's case file and it pulled a missing person report for Charles Gallagher. So the next day, when they're headed to pick up their mother's cremated remains, Nicole's sitting in the back seat of the car reading through the case file, and she discovers that Charles's mother reported him missing on December 28th, 1999, only a few weeks after he was acquitted and released, and she shares that information with her siblings.
Scapegoat.
Yeah. So from the report, she reads that his mother stated that Charles left the house for the first time since he was released, and he'd gone to the local bar. She noticed that he still wasn't home that morning. In the investigation, they found that all of his belongings and his work vehicle, everything was all accounted for. It was as if he vanished into thin air, and his mother insisted that he would never abandon her. Unfortunately, though, it seemed that nobody cared, and now Beth reinforces that by saying that she's focused on just picking up their mom today and taking her home. And she just gets out of the car and walks up to the funeral home. So she's like, I'm done.
Yeah.
We're not doing this. And then the following day is their mom's funeral. And they're holding the funeral at their home per Laura's request. She had asked to be cremated and have her remains spread on the land at their home. So while they're starting their makeshift eulogy, Lucas walks up pushing his mom, Susan, in her wheelchair. And when they approach the mourning siblings, Susan happily looks to Michael and says, "Hi, Brian." She has dementia.
That's right. Okay.
So she goes on and she's asking where Laura is, referring to her as the birthday girl. And then, of course, she starts asking where Emma's at. And Lucas just is getting uncomfortable. So he's like, I'm just going to take her back home.
Yeah.
And you guys can just finish finish the funeral in peace.
Yeah.
So after they leave, Nicole's like, should we just tell her? Like, she's not going to remember anyway. Should we just tell her what we know? But Beth is like, shut up. We're not doing this right now. I'm done. And they move forward with like spreading their mom's ashes. And that's that.
Okay. So they should be opening those envelopes soon.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. That's what I'm waiting for. I want to know what's in. There's like 5 envelopes floating around right now. 6.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. So now for another journal entry dated December 27th, 1999.
Okay.
It's 3:06 a.m. and Laura's jolted awake by the sound of the shower. She reaches her arm out and discovers that Brian's not in bed. So she goes to the bathroom to investigate. There, she finds Brian. He's in the shower, but he's left his clothes laying on the floor, so Laura picks them up and starts looking at them. They're covered in dark red spots, and they left a red stain on her skin after touching them. Brian steps out of the shower, wraps a towel around his body, and says, "It's not my blood." And when Laura asks what happened, or she said, no, it's like, what did you do? He responds, "I didn't do anything. You did this when you staged Emma's bicycle to be found." And
Jesus.
So Laura argues that she couldn't just let an innocent man rot in prison, referring to Charles.
Right.
But then Brian simply says, "Well, you don't have to worry about that anymore."
Yeah.
Because Charles Gallagher is dead.
There you go. Yep. Saw that coming.
So
Goodness.
present day again, it's the day after their mom's funeral, and Lucas comes over to the house to see Beth while Michael and Nicole are out getting Nicole's methadone treatment.
Okay.
They start talking, one thing leads to another, and they end up having sex in her childhood bed.
Okay.
Afterwards, Lucas tells Beth that he needs to confess something. He says that his dad, Eddie, didn't commit suicide as had been reported by the police like years prior. And they didn't really touch on this a whole lot before, so this is the first, insight that we really get to it.
Yep.
So Lucas goes on telling Beth that he actually found the note that his dad left behind saying that he couldn't forgive himself for what he'd done. And from that and the fact that he died on the 2-year anniversary of Emma's disappearance, Lucas had convinced himself that his dad had something to do with it.
Damn.
And so now that he's confessed all of this to her, Beth's like, "Oh my God, I have to tell him now."
Okay. Oh.
So she gets the tape.
Oh no.
And
This is about to get gnarly.
yeah.
Okay.
And the whole time, because nobody but the 3 of them knew about this tape, so it's just been sitting on top of the VCR in their living room since they found it, just like out in the open.
Okay.
So she tells him what they found and everything like that. And she's trying to explain. And Lucas is like, "The fuck are you talking about?" So she puts on the tape and she goes to play it for him. She's like, "Just watch. You just have to see it for yourself." But right when it gets to the part where Brian calls out for Laura, the screen turns to static. And Beth tries to rewind, then fast forward.
What?
The tape auto ejects, so she tries again. But now Lucas is getting pissed. And he's like, "What the fuck is your problem? Is this a joke? Why would you even say that?
Yeah.
This is my sister."
Yeah, right.
So he leaves. And then when Michael and Nicole return to the house, they find Beth outside burning boxes of their childhood and parents' belongings in a large fire in the front yard. And so Michael's trying to put out the fire and stop Beth and everything like that, but she's fucking raging.
Okay.
And she tells them she's going to sell the house and then she's leaving for good. She's done with everything. And Michael...
Jeez.
Oh, okay. I thought you were going to say something else.
No.
But Michael responds and he's like, "Okay, it's fine. I'll have my financial advisor send everything over for the paperwork. You don't have to take care of anything. It's fine. I got it." And she's like, "Fuck you.
Yeah.
I would rather burn this house to the ground than sell it to you." And he's like, "Fine. Fuck both of you." And leaves. Doesn't even go back for any of his stuff. Just gets in his car and leaves.
Okay.
And so Beth's like, fuck that guy. And so she walks inside.
Okay.
Another journal entry. This one is continued from the December 27th entry.
Oh, okay.
And Laura is describing how her and Brian are sitting on the edge of their bed. And he tells her that Eddie, Emma's dad, is the one who killed Charles Gallagher. That night, they were all at the bar when Charles walked in. And at first, Eddie was furious, and Brian was trying to get him to leave and everything. But Eddie refused to go and just started like slamming shots. And the more that he drank, the less attention he was even paying to Charles. So Brian was like, fine, we'll just like, I'm just going to stay. We'll monitor him. Da, da, da. Eventually, though, Eddie said he was going to the bathroom. He gets up and walks away, but then he never comes back. So Brian's like, okay, he's probably just pissed drunk and went home. So he's like, I'm just going to go do the same.
Okay.
So he's walking home and he crossed through the park, and that's where he discovered Eddie sobbing on the ground a few feet away from Charles's lifeless body, lying in the snow, bloody and beaten.
Jesus.
So obviously it's understandable why he did what he did.
Right.
I
Okay.
mean, he thought this man killed his daughter and got
Yeah,
away with it.
right.
Like,
Okay.
you know, makes sense.
Okay.
But
Yeah.
Brian knew the truth. So he helped Eddie get away with it. Told him to go home, clean up, like, we will never speak of this.
Jesus.
And he took care of the body. So this is when Laura narrows her eyes at him and she's like, Charles would never have even been involved if it wasn't for you and your anonymous tip.
Yeah, that's true.
Turns out, yep, Brian was paranoid and trying to take any potential heat off of them. And so he was the one that called in that anonymous tip and pointed the finger at Charles.
Wow.
As the target. Yeah.
That's shitty.
So they go back and forth and they're like passing the blame about Charles and Emma's bicycle. And then finally, Laura, she's like, it's time. You need to tell me the truth or I'm going to go to the police myself. She's like, I don't care if if I get sent away right along with you, I fucking deserve it.
Yeah.
Tell me what happened or else. And so he tells her everything.
Okay.
In the very beginning. Back to present day. So after Michael leaves, peels out, Beth storms back in the house, and Nicole is just like, what the fuck just happened? Like, there's a fire. What's happening?
Yeah.
It's crazy. And so she's like, I'm just going to go inside. I'm just going to go to my room. So she goes up to her room, and that's where she sees the envelope that she received from Laura from her lawyer. And so recall, the instructions were to not open them until after the funeral, which was yesterday.
Exactly.
So she opens it to find a folded piece of computer paper with about a third of it missing. And when she opens up the paper...
It's funny because there's 3 letters.
When she opens up the paper, tears immediately fall from her eyes because it reads, "You're not the child I wanted, but you're the one I deserved. Regretfully, your mother."
Jesus Christ. Okay.
Yep. So...
That's pretty awful.
Yep. So by now, this point in the day, it's raining and we're in Beth's point of view. And she's like trudging through the tall grass behind the house with a shovel in one hand and one of her mother's old journals in the other.
Okay.
She had been reading an entry dated August 15th, 1999, when she got to the last line where Laura wrote, "I've learned there's a lot of things you can bury, but the past isn't one of them."
Oh, that's deep. Yikes. This family's crazy. God.
So Beth is headed out to the creek where Emma was last seen in that video. So she's digging around there, and after digging several small holes and everything, she's like screaming in frustration. And then she gathers herself and she's like, duh, stupid bitch. Obviously, Emma wouldn't even be down here because if she was buried down at the creek with the way that it rises and falls, she would have been found a long time ago. Obviously, she's not here. So she stands up and she's like scanning the area, looking around at her surroundings and everything. And there's thick woods over on one side with a path that leads to an open field beyond the forest there. And so she ventures over into the trees and just kind of starts hacking away at like overgrown weeds and bushes until she reveals a small clearing. And inside, she sees 2 rows of 3 wooden crosses lined up in the ground on either side of it. And Beth moves in closer and sees a collar hanging from one with the name Mooch written on the crosspiece in childlike handwriting.
Okay.
Beth's handwriting, because he was her cat.
Okay.
Moving along, she reads the other crosses.
Oh, no.
Timmy, Sasha, and on the other side, Butterfly, Goofy, and Garfield. But Beth stops for a moment and rereads the last 3. She doesn't remember them ever having pets with those names, like especially one named Butterfly.
Okay.
So she starts digging. She digs and digs until she can hardly bear to continue when the shovel hits something hard. And Beth drops to her knees and starts using her hands to scrape away at the soil in an attempt to unearth whatever is under it. When she finally does, she's gasping for air and choking, unable to breathe, because she found a skeleton and it doesn't belong to an animal.
Jeez. And there's 3 of them. Damn.
So meanwhile, Nicole is driving like a bat out of hell in her mom's old station wagon on her way to the local bank with the key in hand for the lockbox that their mom left for Beth.
Okay.
She's pissed and on the hunt for money to get a fix. So,
geez.
I mean, keep in mind, she finally got clean so she could come back to her mom and get back in her good graces. And then she got that note. So she's like, who fucking cares?
Okay.
So she gets there and, you know, she buys her way in without ID by presenting the lockbox key and tears to convey her obviously sudden loss. And once inside, she opens the safety deposit box and finds yet another sealed manila envelope with her mother's handwriting across the front spelling out the truth.
Okay.
Nicole opens the envelope, and inside she finds old mementos from her childhood, along with an old receipt and a torn piece of clothing. The receipt is for a money order with $5,000, or for $5,000 signed by Brian. And the piece of clothing has a name stitched on it, one that Nicole recognizes. And when she reaches back into the envelope, she finds another letter, and she knows that it's going to separate her life into 2. Before she knew the truth, and the aftermath. So she braces herself, and then she reads every admission left behind by her mother. So back at the house,
okay.
Beth has now dug up all 3 plots belonging to Butterfly, Goofy, and Garfield. And unfortunately, they're exactly what she was expecting to find.
They're all bodies.
So Beth remembered that Susan, Emma's mom, used to call Emma Butterfly because of how she used to flutter around. So those are her bones in that grave. She's not entirely sure who Garfield is, but there was an adult skeleton in that grave. And then finally, she looks at Goofy, and this is the one she openly weeps for. Goofy is the nickname that Laura used to call Brian. She knows for sure that it's him because of the gold wedding band loosely hanging from the bones on his ring finger. She's grieving her father when a familiar voice calls out to her, and she responds without a thought. And right as they reach her, she recalls her mother's final words. Don't trust.
Okay.
Back to Nicole, who's now flying down the highway, swerving around a semi-truck, trying to get back to the house. She calls 911, gives them the address, and just as the house is coming into view, she says, there are bodies buried, 3 of them. Beth jumps out of the overgrown weeds, and she comes face to face with Lucas. And he tells her that he came to find her, and he starts questioning what she's doing, trying to look around her past the weeds.
He came back, huh? Okay.
And he explains that he was taking the trash out when he heard her scream. So he came over to her, and Beth hadn't even realized that she was screaming. So she confesses to him that she found Emma and her dad and someone else. And she
I
shows
thought the dad was still alive. That's the one with the IP address a mile away, right? Or an hour away? Okay.
and she shows him the graves, and he turns to her with tears in his eyes and asks if her parents killed his sister. And so Beth is like scrambling for answers. She's trying to like rack her brain for memories, like some sort of explanation, when it all clicks, but it's too late. And suddenly there's a loud sound of metal hitting bone. Beth turns to see Michael with the shovel in his hands, now bloodied, and he says, "You should have just left the past in the past, Beth." He pushes her closer to the graves, and that's when another piece of the puzzle puts itself together. And she says, "This is why you wanted the house so badly,
Yeah,
isn't it?"
I knew that was coming. Okay. Yep.
And he confirms
He was too thirsty for the house.
He
Okay.
confirms her suspicions, and he tells her, "If you had just accepted the money I was going to pay, which is way over market price, we could have all just gone our own way.
Yeah.
Like nobody would have known anything." And so she tries to appeal to him. She's like, "You can just have the house." But it's too late now.
Okay.
And when he asks her where Nicole is, she's like, "You know, she's gone, and so is Mom's station wagon." And so Michael sinisterly says, "Probably opened that letter from Mom and went and got a fix. Shit, when I read it, I thought about shooting up heroin, and I don't even do drugs.
Jesus.
So I can't imagine what it did to her." When Beth asks what he is talking about,
Yeah, she
he
hasn't opened it yet.
continues his reveal saying, "I may have switched mine with hers. Mom had much nicer things to say to Nicole than she did to me."
Damn.
Which was surprising, since one of us is a drug addict and the other is a successful tech entrepreneur.
Damn. That's
So-
fucked.
Beth is staring at him in disbelief, and she's like, "Did you kill Emma?" And he's like, "It was an accident. It's a fucking accident." He's explaining that they were playing down by the creek and they decided to climb up to the bridge. When they were up there, Emma was pretending that she was in Titanic, and she leaned over the guardrail of the bridge. He said he only meant to scare her, that he thought it would be funny. So he ran at her, pretending that he was going to push her.
He probably did.
But she got startled, and she lost her footing, and she fell.
Yeah, right.
She just barely missed the creek and instead fell right onto the bank below. He tried to wake her up, but she wasn't moving, so he covered her body with nearby brush and ran home. Later that night, he confessed what had happened to their father, who cried with Michael, and then he said that he'd take care of it. Beth obviously isn't sure what to even believe anymore, so she's like questioning why their dad is in one of the graves then if he covered for him.
Okay.
So surprisingly, Michael says that he didn't even know that Brian was buried there. But Beth like keeps pushing at him and like poking holes in his excuses, and he finally relents. And Michael calmly begins to tell Beth how he had actually returned home 7 years prior, after his girlfriend had passed away unexpectedly.
Huh. Of course.
Beth lifts a brow and asks if he killed her. Quickly, Michael spits back at her. "Fuck you, Beth. You're just like Dad. That's exactly what he thought, and he wouldn't believe otherwise." And he's telling her how he was just trying to grieve his girlfriend, and he just wanted his parents. But Brian just kept asking question after question, and then he started screaming at Michael about how he ruined his in-laws' lives. And so Michael describes how Brian lunged at him and wrapped his hands around his neck and started squeezing as hard as he could. And he said it was self-defense.
What? Okay.
So Beth is horrified, and she's like, "How was Mom involved in all of this?" And Michael reveals that she actually helped bury her husband.
Jesus. So she was covering for the son. This whole family's just covering for each other.
And then when she questions him about the email that she received from their dad, he just laughs and he's like, I'm good with computers. All he needed to do was send Nicole on a wild goose chase to throw her off and start a fight with Beth. And then he was free to work in the background, tearing out pages of their mother's journals, erasing the tape. And so he's
I was wondering. Yeah.
He's confessing all this stuff. And at this time, that's when Nicole starts calling out for Beth in the distance. And a fight ensues between Beth and Michael. And then, Nicole joins in once she reaches them, obviously on Beth's behalf.
Where's Lucas? He was just there.
He got knocked out with the shovel.
Oh, okay.
Yep. And so the girls are trying to overpower their brother. And Nicole's like, she ends up picking up the shovel and like hits him in the arm and like cuts his arm with it. But before she can like swing it around and hit him again, he hits her in the face and causes her to like stumble back, and she like falls over and everything. Beth lunges towards the shovel now that Nicole dropped it, but Michael notices and like dives towards it at the same time. Nicole kicks up her leg and trips him. They're all wrestling on the ground and everything. They're fighting over this gun that, he now has.
Okay.
And so they're wrestling around, fighting on the ground and everything when the sirens start approaching the house, and then a gunshot rings out. Okay. So now the cops have arrived, and Casey Dunn is talking with Nicole, and she's staring over at two paramedics carrying a gurney across the yard, and Lucas is in another ambulance getting checked out. So Casey is explaining to Nicole.
Michael was shot.
Casey is explaining to Nicole that Lucas needs to go to the hospital for an MRI. And then he turns to her and Beth and tells them that they need to go to the hospital too. So yes, it was Michael that got shot. After, they finish talking and they walk away and everything, Beth pulls out this letter that she had, I guess, gotten from Michael and hands it to Nicole. And on the front, the envelope says Michael in their mother's handwriting. And so Nicole's like, the fuck do I want with this? But Beth explains like how he swapped their letters.
Them. Yeah.
So she's like, this one's for you, I promise. So then, at that time, then Nicole hands over the manila envelope that she had retrieved from their mother's lockbox.
Okay.
The envelope containing the truth.
Okay.
So this is the letter from Laura. I'm not going to read the whole letter, but in the letter, she confesses everything. How Brian desperately needed her help getting rid of Emma, how he wouldn't tell her what happened. Then she explains how Brian called in the anonymous tip and she couldn't take the guilt for how Charles was suffering because of them. So she planted Emma's bike to be found to exonerate him. And the night that Eddie killed Charles, Brian finally told Laura everything. He told her that Michael told him about how it was all an accident, but then later Brian learned that Michael lied. Christy Roberts had shown up at their house a couple of months after Emma disappeared, and she showed Brian a roll of developed film. She had been out taking pictures that night, and the photos that she presented to Brian resembled an old flip book with how detailed they were of what really happened. Michael had pushed Emma off the bridge. It wasn't an accident.
Saw that coming.
The photos showed him splashing water on her body afterwards, then dragging her body under the bridge, and then ultimately covering her up with the bushes and stuff. Christy made an offer to Brian right then and there, saying, pay her $5,000 and help her get out of town, and she won't take the photos to the police. So he did it.
Okay.
And then Laura makes a point to note that she also confirmed that Christy actually is alive and well. She, like Brian, didn't kill her. She's living happily ever after with her husband and kids. She's fine.
Okay.
So that was where she was like, okay, he's fine.
Okay.
And so she goes on to explain that They were so horrified of Michael and what he'd done that they just tried to protect everyone else from him by keeping him busy so that he'd never have another opportunity to hurt anyone ever again. And so that's why they enrolled him in so many activities and all this stuff growing up. And she acknowledged that they likely neglected the girls during all of this, but she insisted that they were really just trying to protect them. And that was, they believed that they were doing the right thing until Michael showed up in 2015 crying about his girlfriend and how she died in a freak accident. And then Brian and Laura were convinced that he had killed again. So Brian and Michael ended up in a screaming match in the other room while Laura was cooking dinner the following night. And, the next thing she knew, there was a loud thud and Brian was laying on the floor in a puddle of his own blood while Michael stood over him with one of his old trophies from science camp. And that was covered in Brian's blood.
Killed again. Yep.
She was distraught, obviously, like that's her husband, but she knew that she had to do one last thing to protect her family. So she made Michael help her bury his father.
Jesus.
And then she told him to leave and never come back, and that was the last time that she would ever protect him. She directed Michael to take Brian's truck, keep his face covered, use cash, and leave the truck near the Mexican border. She found an old note that Brian had left her after some stupid fight that they had had. And the note said, "Laura, I'm sorry. Love, Brian." And that's what she presented to the police when she filed the missing persons report. And that was the last time that she saw Michael. And she vowed to always love him, but only from afar.
That's fair.
So that's the whole truth. That's everything.
That's wild.
So now, fast forward 3 years later, Beth is now married to Lucas. They have a son together.
Oh.
They live a few towns over from where they grew up. Michael didn't end up dying that day. He was in the hospital for a long time and he endured countless surgeries. But to this day, he's locked in a cell 30 miles from their hometown where he'll stay until he's up for parole in 2050.
Oh, wow.
And Nicole, she stayed sober.
Oh, nice.
And she went on to write the best-selling memoir, Home is Where the Bodies Are, where she recounts her harrowing and horrific experience of a family bogged down by the sins of some of its members.
Wow. So is this a true story?
No.
Okay.
That's the
I was about to
story.
say. Okay. That's not
That's
bad.
the story.
Wow. That was pretty good.
Wasn't it?
I like that.
That was the very good book.
I couldn't foresee like all of it coming, but there was pieces of it that
See,
I
because
definitely saw it coming.
yeah. So when I was reading it, I saw it when I was going back through. And I think it was when like she says that Brian tells her everything. And she's like, I completely understand because I would have done the same thing. And I was like, did Michael have something to do with this? So like, and I mean, honestly, I think in my notes that I have on Storygraph, in like the first chapter or something, I was like, it was either the husband or the son.
Well, yeah, pretty much. I was wondering about the whole Mexican border thing. I was like, that's sketchy.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, from
that's
Wisconsin
wild.
all the way to
there was
Mexico.
a lot of envelopes in this book.
There was a lot of envelopes.
Yeah, there was like 6.
I know.
So wait, what was in the one from the cop to what was it, Nicole?
The first envelope was
that was the
case
fourth
file for Emma Harper.
Oh, so we never got to see what was inside that.
Well, they were
that's just all it was.
that was they had read through them.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Got it.
That was when they first found out about Charles Gallagher being involved.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Got it.
And then the second time that they met up was when he gave her the envelopes or the case files for Christy Roberts and Charles Gallagher.
Yeah, how is she just getting all this? Just like
She told him that she was writing a book.
there you go.
She was like, "Oh, I want to
Yeah,
write
yeah.
like a true crime novel
Right.
about it. So like, can you help me? I want
That's your
to
in.
like do some investigation and blah blah
Only
blah."
in a
And-
small town would that
Well,
ever
yeah,
fucking
I
happen.
think that was really the focal point of like why it had to be in a small town. Like
Had to
they
be.
had to know each other, had to
Yeah.
go way back because there's no way in hell
Exactly.
that any other cop is just.
I liked
gonna
how
give
it
you that
ended though.
information.
I like that. How it like it almost
Sweet. Go ahead.
I liked how it ended because like how it almost played into like it was her story the whole time. You know, I like that. Yeah, it was a good book.
I thought that was pretty clever.
I like that one.
Yeah.
I'm a fan.
I know it was long, but
No, I mean it was good though.
good.
I
was trying, well, that's why, like, I was kind of explaining it the other night where I was saying that I can't, like, take these notes and try to do it as I'm reading, because I pick up, like, how I said, oh my God, I bet it's this guy.
Yeah, right.
Or, like, I'm picking up on shit. So I'm like, now I'm like, if I'm trying to retell it to you, so if I go back after I've read it, then I'm like, okay, now I know, like, specifically what to leave out or what to tiptoe around.
That's funny.
And if anybody listens to this, I purposely left things out. So go read the book.
There you go.
You like the book?
Yeah, I thought it was good. I
like the story.
I think there was certain things though that you thought you said, but you didn't.
Like what?
So like, I don't remember Lucas getting hit with a shovel.
Oh yeah, that was the sound of the metal hitting bone.
See that? Okay, that right there.
I guess I didn't finish that sentence.
So that made it sound like it was digging. There was some digging and hitting the bone. That's why I was like, "Where is Lucas?" And then there was another one where it was
okay.
There was one more where I was like, "Wait, who or where's this person?" I forget what it was. But there was one more where like you didn't actually like you didn't say how you got there. But it was towards the end.
Okay.
But it was right around the time where Lucas.
Yeah, there was a lot more. Like the chapters get a little bit shorter, and they were jumping around.
Taking an entire book into an hour and a half too. Well,
yeah.
You know. But another thing too is that what was it? The gunshot too. Mm-hmm. It's like a gunshot rang out or something like that. Mm-hmm. Like never said like where that came from. Where'd the bullet come from? Because
they were fighting over the gun.
But who? But you said the cops pulled up at the same time.
I realized that. I guess I realized that once I was saying it.
Yeah.
So what had happened
because it made it sound like the cop pulled up.
Yeah.
And then they shot.
Oh, okay. So let me backtrack real quick just to like cover all my bases.
Okay.
So when Beth and Lucas are standing there and she like tells them that she found the graves and everything like that. That's when Michael comes up, hits Lucas in the head with the shovel, knocks him out. And then he has a gun and he's like, hey, sister.
Yeah.
You shouldn't have fucking done any of this. So that was my bad. I should have said that he walked up, he had the gun, he shot him.
Yeah, right.
So he didn't shoot him. He hit him with the shovel.
Yeah.
And he was like threatening his sister with a gun, and he's like, you could have just left everything alone. Yeah. Now you're never gonna leave. Basically, he's like, now I have to kill you too because you know too much. And so then when Nicole comes up, that's like when they're all wrestling around on the ground. It's like it goes from them wrestling over the shovel to then wrestling over the gun.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like none of that was in.
I know.
That.
I'm sorry.
No, well, it's fine. There's a lot you gotta.
No, like I know. Also, I was like rushing at the end because that's when I was trying to go make dinner.
Yeah. No, it's fair.
Well, the kids kept coming in and they're like, "I'm hungry." So I was like, "Let me finish." I really tried to like condense it, especially towards the end. Because, like, the chapter, you know, it's like, okay, this is it. Like, you want to try and you want to know what's happening, but you also want to get everybody's perspective.
Right.
And so, like, even a lot of it, like, look at the notes. So.
That's a lot.
The way that I was reading it, I had it marked so I could keep track of the chapters. Yeah. But I wasn't, like.
I had no idea where the chapters were.
I know. Well,
I was assuming, but I didn't know.
The first time that we stopped, we've gotten down to 18 chapters.
Oh, okay. And
so that was the first time we
brushed
refilled.
over a lot. So, yeah.
And then, like there's even spots where I'm like, okay, I'm covering like multiple chapters at once. And I think towards the end too, when there's like some fluff and stuff.
Right.
There's one point, right here, I cover like 3 chapters in one blurb.
Yeah, right.
And so I was like, it's starting to pick
Obviously,
up. We need to like focus on just getting the point across. You know?
That makes sense though.
But I mean, it was a good book. Obviously, for retelling, there's a lot of cut out.
Oh, yeah.
But and then, like I said, there was some that I intentionally left out that, like, especially clues that I thought telling it would really just kind of give things away.
Yeah,
so
that's fair.
There were points where I had to, like, make a note, like, okay, there's this thing. If I need to come back to it, I will. Yeah. Otherwise, I'm going to delete this.
Makes sense.
And so, if I could... I deleted what I could.
Yeah, right.
Just so, because still people should go buy the book.
Exactly.
It's a good book.
Yeah.
It really is. Thank you for tuning in to the very first episode of Rants on the Rocks. I hope you enjoyed hearing my retelling of Home is Where the Bodies Are by Jeneva Rose. You can check out the book from your local library or purchase it from your favorite book retailer. It's available in digital and audio formats, as well as both hardcover and paperback physical copies. Like I said many times, I left things out, so go find this book, read it or listen to it, and then let's talk about it. Until next time, bye.